The Second Amendment guarantees us the right to bear arms. The question is, does it guarantee this right to all of us at all times? And if not, then under what circumstances and who makes that decision? Plus, are there any checks and balances? Don't answer these questions yet. Listen to the story I'm about to tell you. This is a case from a few years back where somebody's right to bear arms almost cost somebody else their life. If you like this kind of content, please like, subscribe, and comment. I'd love to hear from you guys. Welcome back to the G-Spot, where we talk about true crime, actual criminal cases from my own case files. My name is Dmitry Gurovich, Mr. G. I've been a criminal defense lawyer for over 29 years, and I've got stories. So sit back, relax, and welcome to my world. Jim and Martha are a nice elderly couple. They're in their early 80s, and they're enjoying their retirement, their kids and their grandkids. Their next door neighbor, Bob, is a motorcycle mechanic. He lives alone. He divorced many years ago. He loves Harleys. Now, this guy is a skinny 5'7", in his early 60s, approximately 130 pounds, long, wispy, salt and pepper hair. His usual outfit are a pair of jeans, motorcycle boots, and a leather jacket. His wallet is also chained to his jeans. Jim and Martha and Bob have been neighbors for many years. And while Jim and Martha were eating dinner that night, Bob was eating pizza, drinking a Pepsi, and watching the news. Just another set of neighbors in a typical neighborhood on a typical weeknight, finishing up their day. Jim and Martha were in the kitchen. They were cleaning up after dinner. Jim was washing dishes and Martha was drying them. They were talking and laughing about something that happened with their grandkid that day. You could hear soft music playing in the background, and you could still detect the smell of coffee from when they had dinner. It was a nice, quiet evening. Suddenly, Jim dropped a fork. He started laughing. He looked at Martha and said, "Look how clumsy I've gotten over the years. I can't even hold on to a fork." And as he said that, he bent down to pick it up. And as he did, there was a whooshing sound above his head. And then another one. Now, Jim is an old soldier. He grabbed Martha by the hand and pulled her down because he knows the sound of a bullet when he hears one. And as he pulled Martha down, there was a third whooshing sound above their heads. Martha grabbed her phone and dialed 911. Literally minutes later, the cops were all over the place. They locked everything down and they started their investigation. And what they saw was very interesting. They saw bullet holes in one wall of Jim and Martha's house and in the opposite wall. And so they followed the trajectory. And it led them, guess where? That's right, Bob's house. Bob had all the lights on and the curtains were completely open. And when the cops looked through these windows, they saw him sitting on his couch with a rifle right next to him. And there was a look on his face of confusion and panic. Well, they drew their weapons and they ordered him out of the house. Luckily for everybody, he complied. They took him into custody with no incident. A few days later, Bob's family bailed him out. And that's when he came to my office. He told me something very interesting. He said that he wasn't trying to shoot at Jim or Martha or at their house at all. What he was trying to do is to shoot at his own walls. So I looked at him, I said, "Bob, hold on a second. First of all, if you shoot at your own walls with a rifle round, don't you think that that bullet is going to exit your wall and hit something or someone on the outside of your house?" He said, "Yeah, I realized that, but I really had to do it." I'm like, "Okay, well then tell me, why exactly were you shooting at your walls?" He said, because I needed to get them before they got me. I go, who? The walls? She says, no, the people inside the walls. They were threatening to kill me, and so I decided to kill them first. I looked at Bob and I said, listen, you ever been diagnosed with any mental health issues? He said, no, absolutely not. I mean, I did have this doctor give me anxiety meds, but I stopped taking them a long time ago because I didn't like the way they made me feel. Okay, Bob, okay. We're going to need to investigate this, and I'm going to need to send you for an evaluation. Okay? He said, yeah, no problem. Whatever you need, I'll comply. So Bob's homework was to find me the name of the doctor that had prescribed anxiety medication, as well as any medical records that he had laying around. I, on the other hand, started talking to different doctors to see who was better suited to evaluate Bob. So all was quiet. Jim and Martha went back to their home and Bob to his, and life continued as it was. One night, Jim and Martha were at home, sitting on their couch, watching television, when they heard a knock on the door. Jim got his cell phone and looked at his Ring camera. And guess who he saw outside of his door? You got it. It was Bob, standing there with a loaded crossbow, of all things. Of course, Jim and Martha called the cops again, and Bob got arrested. When I went to see him, I said, Bob, what is going on? What possessed you? What were you doing outside their home with a crossbow? Bob looked at me as if I'm the one that's confused. And he said, what do you mean? I'm trying to save them from the people in the walls. You see, he said, they moved from my house to Jim and Martha's, and I have to save my neighbors. Clearly, Bob had mental health issues. The question was, did it rise to the level of insanity? You see, in California, insanity is a defense. It's called the McNaughton rule. You see, the defense has to show, number one, that the defendant did not understand the nature of his crime. In other words, he couldn't formulate the necessary intent. Or, number two, that he or she did not understand that what he or she did was morally wrong. In this case, when Bob talked to the cops, he explained to them that, hey, he knew what he was doing. He was pulling the trigger. He was shooting at the walls. He understood it was wrong. He understood he could hurt other people, but he was compelled to do that. And he understood completely that it was absolutely the wrong thing to do. And so the insanity defense was out. But during the process, I had a difficult time talking to Bob. He was not understanding what was happening. He did not understand at times why he was even in court. When the judge was talking to Bob, Bob was equally as confused. And so the judge decided to send Bob for an evaluation. Now, in LA County, this evaluation is conducted at the Hollywood courthouse. Now, this courthouse used to be only for prostitution cases, but that has since dried up in the area. And so they converted that court to a mental health court. So if a person's case makes it into that courthouse, he would be taken into custody and evaluated by the county mental health professionals. And that's what happened with Bob. The report came back that given the proper medication, Bob completely understands the process now and can participate in his own defense. Okay. So the case was sent back to the regular court, to our regular judge. When they say, when one door closes, another opens, it was absolutely true in this case. Because now we had an option to explore mental health diversion. Now, what is that? As I told you guys in a previous video, diversion in general is something that diverts the case from its track to trial or a conviction. Mental health diversion is this type of diversion for mental health reasons. The defense has to show that the defendant has mental health issues, number one. Number two, that these issues, these mental health issues or conditions played a major role in the commission of the crime. Okay. Number three, that there is a treatment plan in place that will make sure that this particular defendant is not going to commit any more crime due to his mental health condition. And four, that the defendant agrees to comply with this plan. Everything looked good. We have the mental health condition. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia. It played a major role in the commission of the crime. We had a treatment plan in place. He was going to be treated by the county mental health professionals. And then number four, Bob agreed to comply with the plan. He did do that. However, Bob failed to show up to court twice. Judge had to issue a warrant twice. Every time we had to explain to the judge that Bob either miscalendared or forgot or whatnot. Bob got off his medicine a bunch of times during the case, despite the fact that the judge would tell Bob that he had to be on his medication. He clearly demonstrated that he was not going to comply with this diversion plan, despite the fact that he agreed with it. His treating doctors could not get a hold of him many times during the case. So Bob basically demonstrated to the court that even though he agreed with the treatment plan and he agreed to comply with it, he wasn't going to. And so the judge rejected mental health diversion in this case. So how do I resolve this thing for Bob? I mean, the insanity defense is out. Mental health diversion is out. What can I do for Bob? Well, what we did was this. Bob ended up pleading guilty to negligent discharge of a firearm. And we gave him time served. So no jail time. Whatever custody time he had accumulated up to that point, in this case, he got credit for it and no more. And the judge ordered him into mental health treatment with the county. And he told him, you have to comply, because if you do not, I'm going to send you to prison. So it's been a couple of years now, actually closer to 4, I would say. And Bob has not had any issues at all. Everything's great. He still lives next to Jim and Martha. He doesn't have any firearms or crossbows, thank God. But he's complying with the treatment plan. He's on meds. He goes for evaluations all the time. And so far, there have been no incidents. Knock on wood. So let's go back to our original question. Does the Second Amendment guarantee the right to bear arms to all of us at all times? Having heard this case, what do you guys think? Under federal law, if you have been involuntarily hospitalized and you've been found to be a danger to yourself or others, you may not own or possess any firearms. There are no reporting requirements, however, under federal law. In other words, the hospital does not have to send any reports to the government. It's just a requirement that you cannot own or possess firearms. California and a number of other states, they go a step further. If you have been to a mental health hospital or just saw a regular psychologist, and those people feel that you are a danger to yourself or others, they have to report this immediately to the state government. And you may not own or possess any firearms as a result. There are other categories that fall under this. For example, if you've been convicted of domestic violence, if you have a restraining order against you, you may not own or possess firearms. If you've been involved in violent felonies, or convicted of, I should say, as well as hate crimes. You see, in California and some of the other states, there are waiting periods. In California, it's 10 days. During that time, California evaluates, they do a background check to see if the person that's applying to purchase a firearm is prohibited from owning or possessing firearms. Now let's go back to Bob. Up until this case, Bob was never found by anyone to be a danger to himself or to others. So does that mean that Bob slipped through the cracks? Well, let's say that Bob actually was prohibited from owning or possessing firearms. Okay? What about the crossbow? Are we going to prohibit Bob from having that? What about knives, kitchen knives? What about a car? I mean, that's a dangerous or deadly weapon as well. I mean, how far are we willing to go for public safety? Aren't we trampling at that point on Bob's constitutional rights and the rights of all the other people? Should California and other states like California tighten up their requirements even more, their background checks? Or should they back off, back to the federal standards? Will tightening up these requirements make people be less honest with their psychologists or psychiatrists? Or will they even go to see these people in the first place? Will any of this decrease gun violence or violence in general? And is this at the expense of our constitutional rights? Is any of it even constitutional? What do you guys think? I mean, these are very serious questions with very serious and significant consequences. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Tune in next time for more interesting and exciting real stories. My name is Dmitry Gurovich, Mr. G. This is my spot.